So Cam Ward, who's about to be a first-round draft pick, only played in the first half of the Pop Tarts Bowl, and the hot takes are going crazy.
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Shout out to the everydayers, and thank you so much for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. He is Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. I am Alex Donno from Locked On Canes. Neither of the teams we covered won bowl games. In fact, only one ACC team has won their bowl game or playoff game so far. We'll certainly talk about that. We'll talk about another lawsuit involving Florida State. They now have 3 times the amount of lawsuits that they had football wins this year. We'll talk about the latest one. Kenton, let's talk a little Cam Ward. I've got a very, very strong opinion on this controversy after having had the privilege of covering Cam Ward, and not only covering what he's done on the football field, but having an opportunity to interact with him and getting to know his family for the past year at Miami. So Cam Ward played in the first half of the Pop Tarts Bowl that Miami ended up losing. In that first half, Ward put up 190 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, provided the type of highlight reel stuff he had provided all season long. He took a seat in the second half, and Miami backup quarterback, Emory Williams, that was a poor showing in the second half. Kenton, what was but before we talk about what the actual story is on why Ward didn't play in the second half, what was your reaction when you saw he took a seat at halftime? Did the word quit cross your mind? Like, what was your take on that?
The only thing I would ding him for, and I mean this very genuinely, the only thing I would ding him for is going and getting the record and then sitting down. Yeah. Had he decided to sit out entirely, had he decided to play the first half and sit, if there was no record on the line, then I would have literally nothing bad to say about it. But I do think that that's kind of lame, in my opinion, to go get a record and then sit down. To me,
to add one thing of context, he did throw 2 more touchdowns after the first one set the record.
Right. And I was just about to get into the fact that he did continue to play, so it's not fully like that, but that's the only thing. It could be a complete coincidence. Right. So that is not really a full ding in my book. But I look at this and I'm just like, it's very much so a non-story. Do I think quitting? No. I mean, how many guys have we seen before sit out bowl games and be drafted in the first round? How many? We've seen it time and time and time and time again. What are we doing here? The number 1 overall pick last year, did he play the bowl game?
Nope.
He didn't. Well, isn't that interesting, Donno? We've seen this time and time again. Guys who are going to be top picks decide to, it's just not worth it. What makes Cam doing this at halftime so much more remarkable, so much more terrible?
Right. I mean, it seems to me like people would have treated it like a non-story if he hadn't played, period. Because I get it. Like, if there's no context, the optics of only playing one half can look questionable. Like you said, the idea that he did set the new all-time NCAA record for Division I touchdowns, 508 now in his illustrious collegiate career. The thing that people are this information is getting out there now. Some people are choosing to ignore it because they prefer the quit narrative, but it was prearranged between Cam Ward and Mario Cristobal that he was going to play one half of football. I'm sure that there's probably some interest on the Ward side of preserving himself for the NFL, but I think the decision probably came even more so from the other side because Miami did want to get a glimpse of his potential replacement next year for Emory Williams. And by the way, that audition did not go well for Emory Williams. I think Miami needs to seriously start looking at transfer portal options or perhaps, this often doesn't go well, but they do have a true freshman quarterback coming in who might be able to win that starting job, Luke Nickel, if they don't bring someone else in. Obviously, starting as a true freshman at the Power 4 level is a tall task for anybody. But on the Ward thing, having covered Cam for the past year, never did the word quit ever cross my mind when I didn't see him come out for the second half. And maybe it's because I have the fortunate of having the context, and you do as well, Kenton, because you know what Cam Ward is all about. I mean, he's been nothing but a consummate professional and an ultimate teammate. And he, in just 1 year at Miami, like he was the alpha of that football team, and his teammates would run through walls for him, and his coaches would as well. So, maybe Cristobal could have done a better job, like articulating the fact that him playing for a half was something we agreed upon before the game. I don't think, like, when Cristobal did his post-game presser, I don't think he realized how much fake outrage there would be about it. So that's probably why he didn't address it. I hope he does address it the next time he has media availability, because again, like Kenton, when Cam Ward sat for the start of the second half, like I just thought, okay, they want to get a look at Emory Williams, which is probably a good thing in the long run, because Miami may now realize this may not be the guy we can bank on for next year. But I mean, I can tell you, we both can tell you, having covered Cam Ward in Miami for the past year, that the word quit is not in that man's dictionary. Like that was not his intention. And unfortunately, a lot of people have opinions on this, and most of these opinions are not based on the facts.
Not only are most of the opinions not based on the facts, most of these hot takes are not based in reality at all. Yeah. At all. LSU played in a bowl game last year. Who was their leading passer? It wasn't Jaden Daniels.
Nope.
Because he sat out. Yeah. UNC played in the bowl game last year. Drake May was taking number 3. Who was their leading passer?
Not Drake May.
Not Drake May. Again, this hysteria around him sitting down at halftime is a lot like the contrived hysteria around the transfer portal and saying, NFL teams aren't going to want guys who transferred. Right. And then all it took was literally like a 5-minute dive for me to find out that of the, I believe it was 34 or 35 NFL quarterbacks that started a few years ago, of them, about half were players who had transferred at some point in time in their career.
Wow.
So we're sitting here making these narratives up about NFL teams are going to be scared. They're going to, what type of competitor is he? I don't know if you all know. I don't know if you all have seen the way that young man can place the ball on a frozen rope to wherever he wants it on the field. Oh, well, if that's not enough, his escapability, maybe. Well, if that's not enough, even when he's outside of the pocket and having to run the football, I think he can do that at a high enough level to say, you know what, we'll invest some draft capital in that guy, despite him sitting out the second half of a bowl game, because apparently now that's the big bad boogeyman, ooga booga. But the reality of this is very simple. It is a non-story in terms of Cam Ward. Like you said, Donno, there is a story about Miami's quarterback room, because right now I had to break out the Febreze. P.U.
Dude, yeah.
Like the Grinch said, we're just leaving the holiday season, but stink, stank, stunk are the 3 words that come to mind thinking about what I saw from Emory Williams there. So I think that's a much bigger story than what we did or did not see in terms of Cam sitting down in the second half.
Yeah, like when I did my my post game episode of Locked On Canes, my lead story there, because I underestimated how big of a narrative the Ward thing would become. I just didn't see that. So my lead story was, among the defense playing poorly, what Miami needs to do at quarterback for next year. Like, my lead story was not Cam Ward sitting at halftime, because I didn't realize how big of a thing that would become. But Miami lost their bowl game, which included, not playing enough defense to give your team a win when they score 41 points. 31 of those were scored with Cam Ward on the field. And unfortunately, Kenton, you might want to keep that Febreze bottle handy, because it's been a really tough postseason for ACC football, except our guy Jackson Holzer is partying while everybody else is crying, because the ACC has struggled mightily. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about another Florida State lawsuit and why I have some sympathy for their head coach, Leonard Hamilton, without knowing all the facts. So maybe I should preserve my hot takes, but we'll talk a little bit about the situation. You want to keep it locked right here, my friends. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. We're only getting started with Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That's definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, and even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of 500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Thank you so much for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. All right, so Kenton, I'm going through the ACC's success or lack thereof so far in the postseason. Cal lost the Art of Sport LA Bowl to 24th ranked UNLV, 24-13. Of course, number 12 Clemson lost to number 5 Texas in the college football playoff. SMU lost to Penn State 38-10 in the college football playoff. The Clemson loss was 38-24. Pitt lost in 6 overtimes without Eli Holstein, but still they lost in 6 overtimes to Toledo, 48-46. Thank goodness for Syracuse with Kyle McCord throwing for 453 yards and 5 touchdowns. Syracuse beat a very depleted Washington State 52-35. And by the way, Kenton, we'll talk about that one. Diabolical way to finish that game, because do you know what the spread was for that one?
What?
Syracuse -17, and they won by exactly 17 points. A push!
Oh, a push. A push is now always nasty business.
Yep, I pushed on that one because I had Syracuse -17, so Vegas was too good on that one.
Hey, right on the money. Right on the money. If it seems a little suspicious, if you ask me.
Yeah, a little suspicious. So that was the one win so far, because we had Georgia Tech losing to Vanderbilt 35-27 in the Birmingham Bowl. Miami losing to Iowa State 42-41 in the Pop Tarts Bowl. That was I hope you guys smashed the over on that one, because the line opened up the over under at 55.5. It closed around 61-62, and they combined to score 83 points. So that was free money. We tried to warn you about that one. UConn beat North Carolina 27-14. Nebraska beat Boston College 20-15. East Carolina beat NC State 26-21. So, Kenton, we have 3 more opportunities for bowl wins for the ACC. Louisville is going to take on Washington in the Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl. Duke is going to take on 14th ranked Ole Miss in the Tax Slayer Gator Bowl. And Minnesota takes on Virginia Tech in the Duke's Mayo Bowl. And it looks like, Louisville is a 1-point favorite. Duke and Virginia Tech are both underdogs. Are we going to get a second ACC bowl win before this is all said and done?
I hope so. I mean, damn, did we even pinch the other teams? For Christ's sake. And here's the thing, right? I am not an ACC propagandist. I tell the truth about the ACC. And while I will admit some of these are very wonky, very one-off situations, like Pitt having to play without their starting quarterback here, some of the teams that the rest of the ACC has had to play have had similar situations. So there really is not much of an excuse to say, oh, well, you got to look at how unique our situation is without looking at the uniqueness of other situations. What I will say is this has been a plethora of underperforming teams, a plethora of teams that I look at and I say, what the hell happened to you? What under God's green earth happened? I look up and I say to myself, hey, you're talking about, all of these new coaches coming in and all that good stuff. And, you're looking at coaches being fired here, there, and everywhere. Who's Boston College getting rid of? Who's going to be new on that staff? Oh, okay. And I get it. You're playing with a quarterback that's not the guy that I would believe was the best player on that roster coming in, but he wasn't the starter all year. He wasn't the starter all year for the most part in terms of the second half of the year. So what are we doing there? NC State, there's no way you can lose to ECU. There's no way. With an ECU team that had more opt-outs in their 2D than you had. Come on. Miami. How do you only put up 10 points in the second half, dog?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really love the fact that the second half was treated more like an audition for a quarterback than it was trying to win the game. But and honestly, I thought Miami probably could have preserved a win if they had just fully committed to running the football in the second half. But I think they wanted to see Emory Williams throw, and it did not go well. Did not go well at all. He completed 4 passes, and I don't know if any of the passes he completed were thrown in front of the sticks. I mean, it was rough. So yeah, I mean, it was it's been a tough.
I make no bones about the ACC performance. Again, we got to break out the Febreze because it stunk. It was horrible. It was awful. This conference has looked oblivious, and I'm man enough to admit that. I'm man enough to admit that the ACC, after what we have done in this bowl season, has, in the words of the Osley brothers, you got work to do. You got a job, baby. You got work to do, because you cannot want to be taken seriously as a Power 4 conference with losses too. And these are the teams now in bowl season. Eastern Carolina University. Most people in America couldn't tell you where the hell Greenville, North Carolina is.
I know about ECU, but I couldn't find Greenville on a map. That's for sure.
UConn. Losing to UConn at anything that doesn't involve hardwood, embarrassing. Embarrassing. And Toledo? Come on, man. Come on. The Rockets just got a weight room big enough for their entire team to be in at once. And you lose to those guys, Pitt? It's embarrassing, man. You can't sit up here and say we're a solidified Power 4 conference while you're losing to Group of Fives and independents that, if we are honest about where they would be, there's the Notre Dame level of independent. There's the Connecticut level of independent. There's 2 different levels. Right.
I mean, we're not talking UConn basketball. We're not talking UConn hockey. We're not talking UConn lacrosse. We're talking UConn football. That's a whole different animal. So, I mean, is there a silver lining in sight, Kenton? Like, do you think the conference can bounce back? I mean, I would figure Florida State can only get better from where they are. We're both of the mind that Clemson should be even better next year with another year of Cade Klubnik and a young defense getting more experienced. Obviously I have my concerns about Miami, especially with a tougher schedule next year than what they just had this year. They've got to find themselves so they got to solidify the quarterback room, because I think they're taking steps to make their defense stronger. And I think we could see a defensive coordinator change in the coming days. We'll certainly talk about that if that comes up. It's going to be hard for Miami to be better than or as good as the 10 wins they just had this year. No question about it. I mean, Louisville, are they still on the up and up? How about Bill Belichick? Is he going to? Although I've seen a lot of headlines about transfers he's trying to get to visit, and not a whole lot of headlines about landing guys. So the Belichick experience has not gotten off to the fastest start.
The silver lining for this conference is the exact opposite of Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick is going to be 73 when the season starts, I believe.
Correct. Yeah.
The youth movement in this conference is what's to be excited about. Yeah. You have young guys everywhere that are doing a great job, offensively and defensively. If you start with NC State, you've got my main man CJ Bailey, who's been doing a lot of good work. Miami's secondary looked horrendous this year. Outside of that young buck that y'all got on the corner out there, Frederic he's looked phenomenal. You talk about Pitt and a quarterback that is coming back in Eli Holstein and only going to get better. You talk about Isaac Brown of Louisville, right? One of the only guys. Did you know that Isaac Brown averaged over 7 yards a carry this season?
Insane.
The guy is a freak. He is a freak, and he's coming back next year. So you've got stars all throughout the conference, all over the place, guys that are going to be special. in the future. When you look at that, it's hard to say I have no optimism for this conference. And yes, we all know that the SEC would have excuses made for them if they went this type of performance in bowl season. But at the end of the day, when we perform like this, Donno and I, we're guys that call it straight. We're not going to sit up here and be ACC propagandists. We'll tell you what it is, what it ain't, what it could be, and what it can't. And right now, it reminds me of what Lee Williams and the spiritual QCs would say, because my mother loved playing their music all the time. Sweep around your own front door before you try to sweep around mine. And right now, the ACC's got to pick up a big damn broom to clean up the mess that they've created PR-wise in terms of this poor performance in bowl season.
Speaking of cleaning up messes, there's another lawsuit involving Florida State. Now, to be fair, the person being sued is not the FSU administration. It's not the NIL collective, but it is the basketball coach, very specifically. And it makes me wonder if Leonard Hamilton may compare some notes with Jim Larinaga, and he may be stepping out pretty soon, because we have another NIL-related college basketball controversy. You want to keep it locked right here, my friends. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. Keep it locked. Thank you so much for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. Make sure you check out Locked On College Football for your next listen, because Spencer McLaughlin does a fantastic job taking you around all the big bowl games, storylines, transfer portals. So our next story, Kenton, is college basketball adjacent. So we got the news earlier today, Monday, that 6 former Florida State basketball players are suing head coach Leonard Hamilton over unpaid NIL cash. This was first reported by Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports. This is a quote from Dellinger. In a landmark filing, 6 former FSU basketball players are suing Seminoles coach Leonard Hamilton over $1.5 million in unpaid NIL cash they say he promised them. The details, this complaint details a team-wide boycott of a practice last season over the payments. Now, these 6 players were each allegedly promised $250 in NIL payments. They never received them, by the way. And, Hamilton, allegedly told them, hey, the money is coming, and they wanted to continue playing for him, even though they boycotted a practice, and the money never came. Now, it's interesting to note, Kenton, it's only specifically Leonard Hamilton getting sued here. And again, like at the risk of not being fully abreast of the facts, because we only know what's been reported so far, I have a little bit of sympathy for Leonard Hamilton, because at the end of the day, he's not the one who's cutting the NIL checks that's supposed to come from the collective. So it kind of makes me wonder if I may be speaking out of turn here, but it makes me wonder if maybe the collective told Hamilton the money was coming and they hung him out to dry. So he's in a precarious position here, but he's the one getting sued here over $1.5 million of unpaid NIL.
I have never had a case that I more so look at and say, I need to see more of the facts. I need to hear more than I have in this situation. It was a very similar situation to the UNLV quarterbacks situation this year, where I said, I need to hear more about this. I need to see this thing go out to court and see what happens, because I need to know who exactly promised what, why they promised what, and what was the back end on that. Because you're looking at a situation where we're talking about $1.5 million in promises to these young men. Now, again, I don't care where you're from. I don't care what your socioeconomic background is. For 99.999% of people, that is life-changing money. Yeah. If somebody dropped off $250,000 in Donno's account or my account, we would still come on here and talk to y'all. But our lives outside of this show, the quality of them would increase exponentially. Okay. And so to sit up here and have these young men who were promised money one way or the other, I don't know if it was by Leonard. I don't know if Leonard promised them the money based on the collective. I don't know if it was Leonard going off the reservation and just saying, hey, we got the money. We're going to pay everybody $250,000. I don't know what the situation is. And as much as I have loved to poke fun at Florida State when I got all the information in the court filings to see, oh, these guys are blowing smoke. They're wasting their money. They just like paying lawyers. More power to them. in this situation, I want to know the specifics because again, this is tough, man. How do you walk away from this without a black eye as a university and as a program? Unless it is very clear. When I say very clear, I mean abundantly clear by means of like multiple very clear communications to Leonard Hamilton. Hey, this is your NIL allotment. Do not go over it. Hey, we are not sponsored. Who told you to tell these players that? Anything short of that, you walk away with a black eyes program because now you're looking at, well, the old head coach was a liar and that was just him, if that's the case. But anything else, there's miscommunication between your NIL and your coaches. Your NIL is known to withhold a bag if performance ain't there. All these different things are going on. And the reality of this thing is, at the end of the day, coaches still get their full salary if the team goes. Norvell didn't get a pay cut because of how the team performed. He may have chosen to take one and say, hey, we're going to put money in the NIL. Right. That was his prerogative and his choice to do so. He could have looked at them and said, hey, piss off. I'm not taking that. I signed for what I signed for. If y'all want to get rid of me, feel free. Take that buyout, and I'll gladly leave you all alone. But this is a situation that's so peculiar, or that's so curious and so fragile. I don't want to comment one way or the other until I have more information on this.
Yeah.
But what I will say is this is a tough look for Florida State basketball, even without the information, because, again, there's a million ways this case could go. Very few where you don't look at Florida State a little iffy afterwards.
So here's a cut, and you're right. Let's stick to the facts. So here's a couple more details that were reported by Dellinger, and I have the statement that Florida State has made in response to this lawsuit. So the 6 plaintiffs that are listed: Darren Green Jr., Josh Nickelberry, Primo Spears, Cameron Fletcher, Deontay Green, and Jalen Warley. And none of them are still on the team, by the way. They allege Hamilton promised each of them $250,000 in NIL payments from the coach's quote-unquote business partners, per the complaint. They note the players never received payments from Hamilton, Florida State, or any other party. In fact, several players actually transferred into FSU under the guise that they would receive the money. That's where the allegations start to sound like the Jaden Rashada recruiting scandal to Florida. Here's how Florida State responded, and note their response is very interesting here, Kenton. So Florida State released this statement. Since the beginning of the name, image, and likeness era of collegiate athletics, FSU has maintained a comprehensive compliance education program for coaches and other athletic staff and a clear expectation of ethical conduct by all in dealing with student athletes. Upon learning recently of the allegations made by former men's basketball athletes, the university has worked diligently to determine what transpired last season. Though our inquiry is not yet complete, at this point we know of no unfulfilled commitments by FSU in terms of scholarships or other appropriate benefits or the Rising Spear Collective relative to NIL payments owed to the athletes. We support Coach Hamilton's right to defend himself against these allegations and look forward to an expeditious resolution of this matter. So they're not defending him, but they look forward to him exercising his right. So I don't know, maybe their feeling might be that he went rogue, or at least that's the story that they may be going with here.
I mean, that statement to me says that he went rogue. Yeah, it says that he went rogue. That's what the narrative that Florida State is painting is going with. And again, this is why I'm waiting to see court filings, because there's a very clear vested interest for Florida State to say, hey, he went rogue. There's a very clear interest for them to say the collective had nothing to do with this and he went rogue. And it is possible that he went rogue.
It is. That's why recruiting in college basketball, there's a lot of pressure that comes into that. So it's possible he went rogue.
And that is exactly why I'm not saying, I know for a fact this looks terrible for Florida State basketball. Yeah. The optics from the outside looking in absolutely do look bad, but there is a way for Florida State to show and prove via the courts, hey, this guy went out on his own and did these things. We told him that we would provide this much in terms of how much we can provide to your players. Anything else, you're on your own. He knew he was on his own and did not do so effectively. And I'll tell you this much. With this case, with Jalen Rashada, with anybody else who is going through these types of situations, this is a failure not by those young men. This is a failure by the adults who made promises, by the adults who were supposed to be handling the money, by the adults who said, hey, this is what you're going to get. At the end of the day, whether we like it or not, college football has been a professional enterprise for decades now. For decades. Okay? Ever since we started seeing commercials with head coaches in them, ever since you start going into your gas station and seeing cutouts of your head coach holding Coke or Pepsi products, it has been a big business enterprise. And everybody got paid somewhat smoothly. We rarely ever heard of all these misgivings in terms of the monies until your labor force, until the people who have, and I'm speaking as somebody that has a torn bicep and 2 torn Achilles that were surgically repaired, until the labor force that goes through that, until the labor force that goes through the concussions, through the broken legs, the broken arm, the ruptured spleens, the fractured collarbone, until that labor force started getting paid, everything seemed to be going fine. So I don't want to hear a damn word about, oh, well, those young men just got duped. Charges to the game, it is what it is. Oh, well, Jalen Rashad and his father were just seeking the best deal, and you wouldn't. You work for your job for kicks and giggles. If there's another job that came in your Indeed inbox tomorrow and said, hey, or LinkedIn inbox tomorrow and said, hey, Donno, we'll pay you $100 million to be the host of High Noon on ESPN. You mean to tell me? I love Donno. That's my brother from another mother. I know he said, Kenton, it's your show now, brother. I'm out.
You're not wrong.
Do your thing. And I would do the same. And that's not a disrespect to Donno. I appreciate the opportunity David Locke and Candace Cooper and company have provided me with here. Grayson Boone as well. I appreciate it. But the reality is these young men sought the opportunities that worked out best for them, and promises were not fulfilled to them. Right. Now, who those promises are from is very important and central to the story. But the reality of the story is they were told, this is what you'll receive, and it was not paid out, which is a problem that we never saw when it was just the coaches getting paid.
Yeah, it's a huge problem, and you hate the fact that players are getting taken advantage of, and it doesn't happen everywhere. I'd like to think that more promises are being kept than not kept, but any promises that are not being kept is a problem. Because, like you said, I've never heard of a Power 4 head coach not receiving the payment that was promised to him by his contract. And I understand it's different organizations cutting those checks, but this goes to show you we need more transparency and we need more regulation for NIL.
Absolutely.
Because you can't have players out there getting rug pulled and getting fake promises. It's it's like if the Hawk Tua girl offers you to buy into her meme coin, like it's not fair. It's like, is she the one cutting these NIL checks? Like, we got to reform this thing, man. And I did not buy any of the Tua coin or whatever they called it.
No, I believe spelling that thing coin is safe for me and Donno's account. So we are good. We will pass, actually. Hey, more power to you if you bought it. Me and Donno are good.
We're good. Well, we appreciate everybody for tuning in, making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch. He's Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. I am Alex Donno from Locked On Canes. We'll talk to you next time on another episode of Locked On ACC, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.